Okay, continuing on with topic 4.2, we're going to look at what are things we can do to actually increase our water supply. So we're going to look at a lot of these in detail, reservoirs and redistribution and desalination and artificial recharge of aquifers and rainwater harvesting. Maybe you've heard about some of that on campus. And water conservation, including gray water recycling, can help to reduce demand, but often requires a change in attitude by the water consumers. Like we said, it's your fault for so one of the most common ways that we deal with water shortages is, of course, reservoirs. Strengths, we got a reliable water supply. Hey, look at this. We're in the middle of the desert and we got tons of water year-round. Also, really good flood protection. Colorado River historically would go from, 10,000 CFS. That's about a basketball of water every second. So, 10,000 basketballs a second going by in the river. Anywhere from, a few thousand to 300,000 CFS. So if you're, building your village along the river for navigation and then one of those rare floods comes through, you're going to have a bad time. Happened a lot in the past, and that was one of the big drivers for dams. We also get hydroelectric power. Pretty nice. Does not burn fossil fuels. Keeps a lot of carbon out of the atmosphere. Pretty useful. Of course, there's going to be a carbon footprint when you build the dam and all the machinery and concrete and everything. But once it's built, it's there. Thanks. Maybe less than, definitely less of a carbon footprint. And then we got great recreation activities. Maybe you've gone around on a motorboat. There's some limitations though. We take really beautiful river landscapes and we totally flood them. So that leads to habitat loss, altered hydrology. That could affect, say, fish that rely on muddy waters to reproduce. Now we don't have any more muddy waters. A lot of archaeological sites were actually totally submerged under these reservoirs. Humans are displaced all the time when dams are built. And then eventually they'll fill up with sediment that leads to risk of failure. So you can actually see a small check dam on campus down by the founder's house that is totally filled with sediment now. So here's an example of dams due to ecosystems. So at Grand Canyon, there's usually a huge sediment load and lots of variation of floods, so that builds up. When they built the dam, there was no more sediment and just more water, so it just eroded the sandy beaches. This is a really cool citizen science project where people go to the same spot and they take a picture every year. Now, Glen Canyon Dam is doing experimental floods to try to rebuild the beaches, to try to recreate habitat, to try to make good fishing areas, a lot of different reasons. But yeah, if you're ever on a river trip, you could try to do some of that repeat photography. Really awesome project. And then as our reservoirs shrink lower and lower, we can see the impact by the so-called bathtub ring. This should be Lake Mead down near Las Vegas. Another option we have is desalination. So breaking down this word, saline, referring to salt, and then de, removing it. Strengths, we got tons of water in the oceans. A whole lot more than we have fresh water, that's for sure. 70% salty, about 30% fresh. A lot of our large cities are already near the coast, pretty convenient. That happens to be because of navigation, largely, and trade. But limitations, energy is kind of the biggest limitation. And as a result of that, it's pretty expensive. And then you also have impacts to the ecosystem. A lot of coastal ecosystems are already pretty heavily impacted because people like to live there. And actually, animals like to live there too. They're really rich as far as upwelling and bringing up nutrients and having a lot of productivity and growth. Okay, we could do artificial recharge. This actually happens in the southwest. I think Las Vegas is the biggest recharger is actually now the Colorado River. Strengths, we're refilling our aquifers, right? You're taking your used water and then you're pumping it back into the ground so that we can continue the cycle. Ideally, you're trying to do this kind of at a faster rate than would naturally happen through precipitation. Infiltration as it goes into the sediment, percolation as it limitations, we have a risk of contamination. If you have water that's got some kind of pollutant in it, then we're just pumping the pollutant in the aquifer, which we're all pulling out of. Nice little I guess you could say this is a system diagram, right? We got some of our parts of the water cycle, which is pretty cool. And also you can see, right, this is our aquifer. Sometimes it looks like a swimming pool, right? This is not a swimming pool under the earth. It's water in between the sand and the gravel. Um, but you can see here how it's actually connected to the stream. As the water table comes down, the stream might actually lower too. One of the things that just blew my mind was finding out that streams exist. Like, you see a stream bed and you think it's just the water flowing in the bed, but there's actually water flowing like through the rocks in the bottom of the stream too. You could do rainwater harvesting. This comes from a really cool book by Brad Lancaster down in Tucson. And he developed lots of cool techniques to collect rain from, say, roofs, but also to utilize our surfaces to collect rain and grow native plants with it. So you can see all these are kind of sloped. The water will collect where the thirstiest plants are, which is nice too. You don't even have to do any labor. You just dig it, and then the rain brings the water there for you. Super affordable as long as you have the labor. It works. Super awesome. You can make it localized for your specific purpose. However, sometimes a little bit illegal, depending on your state. Kind of interesting. Other options include recycling gray water. A big perk of this is we're not flushing our toilets with drinking water. Kind of funny, right? The biggest limitation is that people are like, "Oh, you're going to use rainwater? That's disgusting." But there's a lot of really, really awesome examples of this. So the idea is you're still using clean water for the important things like drinking, obviously, but also cleaning yourself, your belongings, and then you use the gray water for things that are less important, like flushing your toilet, or washing your car, or watering your plants. And then all of that water reacts when you go to the sewage and everything. Another really awesome thing about recycling gray water is it makes a lot of wetlands. But here's some of those wetlands down in Tucson. We have Sweetwater. This is right next to the interstate, and this is a habitat that there years ago. I went with Forte. Great, so amazing. Just like really excellent habitat. We also have one right here in Sedona. I think we're going to try to go here in December because it's a really cool spot and a nice opportunity to see how you can create habitat while making more sustainable use of wastewater. Pretty cool. All right, our next understanding: the scarcity of water resources can lead to conflict between human populations, particularly where sources are shared. So political boundaries don't usually follow watershed boundaries. Actually, usually we just draw the boundaries where the rivers are. So you can see here where the current boundaries are, the southwest, and then you can see in green the outline of the watershed of the Colorado River. So any rain that falls within this area will eventually make its way to the Colorado River, and then down and out. When John Wesley Powell first came to the Southwest in the 1800s, he first went all the way down the Colorado River, all the way through Grand Canyon. Congress was asking him to basically tell them about this landscape. He had no idea what it was like. He came out here and he was like, he was on a river trip, but he was still like, dude, there's no water here. We're going to be screwed unless we plan our states based on the amount of water. So this is actually a map that John Wesley Powell drew, proposing different state shapes based on the watersheds that they're in. So you kind of have like a river as the central part of each state, so that they can manage its water resources. Congress heard that, and they kind of preferred straight lines. They just made the Homestead Act, which gave a lot of land. Easiest to cut land up in a nice little square, so why don't we just do that? So we did that. Now we have the four corners. Pretty awesome. Also have a lot of water problem. Here's a nice little image with the water insecurity around the world and then conflicts as a result of that. You can see the intensity of the events down here. So the size will show the number of events, and then you can see more hostile in red or more cooperative in green. You can see the interactions within the riverbed, and then you can see, again, the number of interactions based on the size there. And then you can look at some as well. There's this really crazy story in the Southwest when Arizona was developing and they're trying to build Phoenix. We wanted to get water there, and we're like trying to take the Colorado River, and California's like, no, we want the Colorado River. And supposedly, like both states like sent their militia to the edge of the river and like almost like start fighting over it. Um, but instead, we got the 1922 Colorado River Compact, which turns 100 this year, and is a big mess. So I think they're revisiting it. It'd be interesting to see what they come up with. So some applications and skills. You should be able to evaluate strategies that can be used to meet increasing demand for fresh water. And hopefully you can discuss with reference to a case study how shared freshwater resources have given rise to international conflict. This is actually going to be related to our next activity this week, so do some more of that.